Hello everybody, welcome back. Just came to my attention that one of my top videos has just reached just about 700 views. Specifically, focus camera, there we go. Specifically, my Champions Online character creator spotlight. So apparently, why are you doing this, camera? Stop that. I'm keeping that in so you guys can see what I deal with. Lame technology. Okay, now you're just making me mad. Anyways, so we are going to do another video on that. And hopefully I'm going to do a little bit more effort into this one with some reference pictures and that, and try to make likenesses of some characters that you guys may recognize. Obviously the title of the video is already given away what I'm doing here, but I'm hoping you guys enjoy anyways. And yeah, stick around and see if you can spot your favorite one, and maybe when it comes to character creation, I'll be moderately functional. So obviously I started by just picking up the general archetype that I wanted to play with. For our first selection here, his skin color is obviously one of the most important things about the character, so I had to try to get that color matched as soon as I could, and I settled on this green. If you don't know who it is already, you're not a true Avengers fan, but the next next thing I had to figure out was the hairstyle that I wanted to go with. I kind of ended up going for this because he's a little messy on top, a little thin on the sides. It kind of gave me a little bit to work with here. There's going to be a little bit of crack in the footage here while I opened up my references, and I ended up finding out that he's actually got a little bit of green in his hair. I think that canonically his hair is actually just really, really dark green, but that crack right there. And then I come back in and I ended up putting up a little bit of green just in the tippy tips of his hair right about here. And yeah, then after that, this guy's the easiest. It's kind of why I ended up starting with him. I just went and I just stripped him straight down to his skivvies here. It was very easy if you haven't played around with the Champions Online creator at all. This is probably one of the easiest things you can do. But then I had to try to figure out which, as you see me scrolling through here, which drawers I was gonna give him. I ended up settling for these bicycle shorts, but I didn't want to give him fishnets or anything by accident, so I made double and triple sure. I then had to try to color match the purple as best I could that went with it, and took off his boots and otherwise. Alright, once I got him looking pretty good, pretty much where I wanted him to, I had to go in and change first of all his expression, because Hulk's never really that happy kind of by his character at all. And then I remembered, oh yeah, his eyes are supposed to glow green, so I went back and made sure to fix that up. It looks a little bit silly, but you know, it's canon, so I pretty much had to go for it. And then I went in and I had to change all of his physicality. I had to buff him up. I had to make him pretty much as tall as I could, because I think that Hulk is supposed to be something like 8 feet tall, and we can only make him about 7 feet here. But then I just tried to get his muscles to match my references just as best as I could here. The hands in Champions Online never quite look right, so you'll have to forgive me for the weird thumbs. I was trying to fix them here by dinking around with the proportions, but realistically this is just what I was able to do. But after I pump out his feet here and I try to make him look about as best as I can, you can see my references that I was working from here. And then I went and I actually messed with the face sliders. This is the only character I really did that for, because I felt like it was the most important. Since he was the easiest costume-wise, I figured I'd better put some more into his physicality and his facial features. And pretty shortly, when I'm happy with that, I end up going and changing his stance. And just in here, I went and I changed it to huge beast stance to match the character, and there we go. That's the Hulk. Alright, for our next character, I figured I'd go with the Mind. Not that it really matters, I don't really plan on playing with these characters, but it still feels like good to kind of get in the mindset. For this guy, I needed the skin tone to be kind of a reddish color. It's kind of more like pink in the comics, but it's more red in the movies. So this is the first character where I tried to strike a happy medium between the movies and the comics. Just to be upfront with you guys, one of my favorite Avengers, one of my least favorite that came out in this video. Yeah, it didn't turn out quite as well as I would have hoped. But first things first, I got that skin tone, and then I had to figure out a half mask that would work for what I was trying to do. And I switched the color of that to this green. There wasn't, again, quite the green that I was looking for, so I was trying to find one that was close enough and make the gradient work with me slightly. Next challenge for this character was that they have a gem in the middle of their forehead. Again, that should be a dead giveaway if you're a fan of even the movies. So I'm scrolling through, and there's like 3 or 4 menus that can put things on the character's head, so I had to scroll through all of them to try to find one that worked. Most of the gems that go on the forehead in this character creator have phalanges or wings or branches or otherwise. So I ended up improvising here shortly because I found an attachment that seems to work. It's just not necessarily my preference. And as you can see here, I ended up settling on this third eye because I was able to make it solid, and then making it solid I was able to make it glow. Unfortunately it does blink sometimes, but we just pretend it doesn't. Next thing I needed for this character was, in the comics he had a pretty pronounced collar on his cape. This is where I met my first happy medium, and I found this like folded down collar. And then I temporarily forgot that there's cape attachments in the game, so I'm trying to find capes in the jackets, so pardon me while I faff about in here for a sec, but trust me, I do end up going back to the tights and work from there. I end up going with a cape that's about halfway down. This one seems to work for what we needed it to do. And I just made sure that it worked from the front. It kind of matches up with the collar, so that's kind of what we go with here. And I had to make sure that the back matched, make sure it's all yellow, and that's pretty good. I went into the tights. I had to find one that kind of matched the pattern. Later on when I do another character, I end up finding a pattern that works a lot better. And if I remember, I'll try to point that out at that point. But I'm pretty sure that I just kind of end up going with this one and color matching it best as I can. Once again, the references had a gem in the middle of the fellow's chest. I can't remember if I actually ended up settling on one or if I just went without. I think that I went without. Then this character doesn't really wear a belt. It's just kind of like a unitard, so I just took the belt straight off and I just tried to match his tights again with the reference drawing as best as I could. I had briefly settled on one there and I decided against it, and it looks like I was briefly considering some others as well, but I think again I end up just settling on solid color here in a sec. Oh no, I just went with the briefs so that I could match it up like this. You'll see in the references that this makes sense, but it doesn't quite look as good in game. I try to see if there's any sort of hip equipment that might make it look slightly better, but I wasn't able to find anything in a quick glance. His gloves I just turned solid yellow. I didn't really want to look for any sort of style that might work a little bit better. And then similarly, I went with I was looking for some boots with like wings or whatever, but I ended up going with these ones because I felt like they kind of worked. They just went solid yellow, and here we have Vision. He kind of ended up looking more comic book than movie. All in all, I'd say he turned out okay. I feel like you can tell it's Vision if you're told that it's an Avenger, but as I said, he's not quite my favorite out of all of these. Now, if I was a betting man, I'd say that there's a lot of people that were probably waiting for this one specifically. I went with the Savage archetype just because the attack pattern actually works with this character. See if you can get it right in your comments below. But for this one, you just kind of want a full mask, and honestly, a lot of the details is going to get lost just on account of it. One of the references had white eyes, one of them had yellow, so I decided to go with yellow because it kind of fit better. The character's mask has some kind of ears. They're a little more twisted to the side than the... I was looking for a little detail in here because the one of the references had a lot of detail in the masks. But anyways, this character ends up getting ears on his mask, and the only ones in-game kind of face to the front. I briefly considered those ones. I ended up going with these ones and changing them all black. They unfortunately face a little more to the front than I'd like, but there is no better option. By now, you should probably guess that we're going for Mr. T'Challa here, or the Black Panther. Instead of going with just a regular black unitard, I went with the alien muscle because I was able to add a little bit of gray on the muscle fibers to kind of add a little bit of detail, because otherwise, as I said, all of the detail would be lost. This is the best necklace, or the closest that I could find to his like ceremonial what's it, but I ended up going with it because it's kind of worked. For his fingers, I ended up finding ones that were just called claws, and I went with them. I had to change his skin black to make them work, but that actually gives him claws on his hands, which suit the character's vibranium claws quite a bit better. Technically speaking, if you wanted to, you could technically just give him black skin and then use a lot less like facial masks, etc. if you were trying to make him on your account. But again, with his feet, I ended up just giving him claws. You have to change the toenail color on that. For him, I even tried to give him some facial expression, but you really can't see anything here aside from some eye movement. And I just gave him the beast, I guess, stance, just because it seemed to work the best. Okay, I'll be honest, I feel a little bit bad about this one, but the character that the game already has in place for the bow and arrow archetype already looks a lot like the guy that we're going to be making here. So obviously the resident archer of the Avengers would be Hawkeye. So one of the main things we have to do is go in and change a lot of the colors. I would build this guy from scratch, but it really would have felt like a shame because we already had such a great framework here with everything that they put in. So one of the main things I wanted to do was give him a chest armor of sorts, because we know that Hawkeye has no real extensive superhuman ability, just a lot of practice behind him. So we're looking for some chest armor so that he doesn't, get yeeted in 2 seconds. I ended up going with this like chest holster thing because it gives him a little extra like ammos and things like that, and plus because it adds a crossbar about in the middle of the chest, which kind of makes the whole outfit look a little bit like an H. Or at least that's kind of how I felt as I was making the character, or I guess I shouldn't say making for this character as much as altering or tweaking the character. Once again, with the arms, I didn't really want to mess with them too much. I ended up taking the one ammo pouch off of there and changed his gloves to be purple. I ended up looking for a belt that suited him slightly better, and just ended up going with this solid band. I noticed here that the quiver was actually not quite what I wanted, so I ended up going back in because the references had him with red feathers on his arrows and a much more purple quiver. So I went back in and I changed that before going to his legs and changing the colors over there. And with his feet, he kind of ended up the references had him wearing sort of combat boots, but I found out that this game is actually very much lacking in some of the combat boot criteria, I suppose. I don't know. It was I wasn't able to find anything quite like what I was looking for. As you can say, I ended up just kind of settling for the boots he was already wearing, but the character had a knife in his boot in one of the references, so I ended up just giving him a knife on his hip anyways, because when you run out of ammo, eventually you're going to need something anyways. From here, I went in and just kind of tweaked a few things as far as like attitude and stance, but I didn't do very much. You know, if you want to play as Hawkeye, he's pretty much already there. Next, we have our only female character. Again, that should pretty much be a dead giveaway for even just the fans of the movies. But honestly, one of the few things I needed to really nail with this character was her hair, and I wanted it to have enough layers to look a little bit different, but I didn't want it to be super bright red in any sort of degree. And I also had to try to get her makeup right, so I'll show you guys a trick with that here in just a sec. Sorry for the weird pause. This is me struggling trying to get one of the references open, and I just kind of forgot to cut it out before I did my voiceover. But this is where I'm trying to figure out how to give her lipstick, and then I remember that there's actually some makeup patterns in here, and if you pick one of the goth ones, then you get a nice like makeup pattern. First thing I had to do was try to color match the eyeshadow at least a little bit, and then here's where I'm able to give her some nice red lips, because Black Widow's whole like weapon is her body anyways. And once again, just like Hawkeye, I was trying to give her some sort of chest armor, but I also had to try to leave it so that her we'll say her seduction was unimpeded. So I think I ended up going into the tights and just kind of altering from there, because I didn't find anything in here that would work. I mean, some of the like the Japanese chest wear would have probably worked, but it wouldn't have suited either of the references that I had, and I couldn't have really justified that. So I go in here and I do a trick that people have been doing since the game came out. Find a print for the tights that worked well enough, and I made some of it invisible by color matching it to her skin tone, and from there I made it look like she's effectively wearing a vest. As I had mentioned earlier, there's also this is when I discovered the other tights that would have worked for Vision, and I decided it would be these ones here. So if you were making Vision at home, it would have been those ones that I briefly paused on there. I briefly stopped on those ones, but then I realized that I couldn't swap the colors without making way more of the outfit invisible than I wanted. I ended up settling on these ones, and the color didn't quite match right away. As you can see, it's a little too pink, so I had to change the skin tone there. And from there, I ended up changing the blue to black, and the whole outfit to kind of a leather look. And this is kind of the basis that we built our version of Black Widow off of. One thing I needed to nail for Black Widow is her Widow's Bite, which are these like bracers on her wrist that kind of shoot taser-like energy, basically. So I gave her these kind of cool alien-looking ones, and it made them glow. I put a little bit of red on them as well, because red and black are her colors, and I felt like I didn't really put too much red in this outfit, but the reference pictures had a yellow glow on them, so I did that as well. The belt, I tried to match up with one of the references best I could. She really did need a belt to kind of get that like sexy hips kind of thing going on, I guess. That's a weird thing I never thought I would say, but I felt like I matched that all right. I was looking for a tights pattern that would work, and I just ended up going for solid color, because again, she's supposed to be kind of wearing a unitard, I guess. And I was looking at the gun holsters, and they were kind of big and bulky for what I was looking for, so I ended up giving her knives. It's technically not what I would have wanted. I would have preferred her to have guns, but the knives ended up working out. You'll just have to suspend your disbelief on that one, but hopefully I got close enough on this one for any of you thirsty boys out there. But this is my version of Black Widow. Okay, so heads up, this one comes off a little bit weird, because first of all, he doesn't get his signature weapon, and second, there's just certain things that I can't do, but at the same point, there's certain things that turned out really well with him. So this one I'm kind of struggling as to whether or not I liked him or if I really didn't. Let me know what you think in the comments below. But one of the first things that I struggled with is that he's got some weird friggin' wingy thingies on the side of his head. Again, should be a dead giveaway. But I ended up just kind of stylizing them somewhat so that they didn't look too weird or too stand-outy. But then you know, it's gonna look weird no matter what you do, but I couldn't leave them off because then it's not technically the character. I feel like the movie universe probably struggled with the same thing, which is why they kind of stylized it in the movies. But next thing I'm looking for here is that he's got a very signature symbol in the middle of his forehead, which is going to give him away in about 2 seconds. And I had to find this symbol right here, the one that lets you put something on the guy's head. I kind of wish that it was a little bit of a brighter white, and it ends up being kind of like a muddy gray color, but we're going to kind of like live with it. So as you can figure out by now, this is us working on Captain America, and I figured one of the main things I had to nail was the American style tights. And I saw this one and I was like, that's pretty close to my reference actually. So then I just kind of stylized it slightly. You could see it already coming into shape. I just had to cover up the big red dot in the middle. But I figured this big dot might cover up that big dot. And especially because my dude needs a star in the middle of his chest. So I just kind of decided to stylize it slightly. And this is the first character where I just kind of embraced the fact that I'm not going to get it perfect, but I'm going to get it to look kind of cool. So hopefully you guys can accept my stylized version of Captain America. But anyways, I also just kind of decided the references that I had him with some like holsters over his chest. So I was looking, I had remembered seeing some as I was customizing some of the other characters, and I remembered them being a lot closer to what I was looking for, but I wasn't able to find them exactly, so I had to go back. I didn't want any that went over the center of his chest. I didn't end up finding exactly what I was looking for, so I kind of settled for these ones here because they just went over the shoulders exactly like I wanted them to. And I just colored them brown, and I was like, alright, you know what, good enough. Next, I needed to get his gloves to be what I wanted them to be, which is basically just red. I wasn't going to mess with them too much. And then I went on to the belt, which, again, one of my references was pretty clear on what I was supposed to be looking for, so I got close as I could. Which was this kind of just simple square with a couple like looks like containers along the sides, and I just had to color match it. Next, Captain America seems to be wearing some like military style like cargo pants, but as I go through the pants section here, you can see everything's a little too baggy or doesn't fit quite right, and I just didn't want to struggle with it, so I went with the tights, and I just kind of went for a solid color. It's a little bit cheap, but as we're already stylizing anyways, I decided to put a pattern on it, because that kind of helps a little bit. I tried to see if there was a pattern that kind of matched the references, but I don't believe I ended up going for one. I think I briefly considered this one here. And that's why I kind of like look at it, but I was like, nah, I'm just gonna go with a no on that one. But then I had to try to find where the solid color was again. After figuring that out, again, I struggled with the same thing as I struggled with for Hawkeye, where there's really no combat boots or military style boots aside from armor. And so I just kind of went, you know what, these ones are kind of cool, let's go with those, even though it doesn't make sense because this guy doesn't use canisters or grenades or anything like that. And I was going to keep his boots blue, but I figured they looked a little bit better brown. So as you can see from my references, I think I got actually not too bad, all things considered. But what do you guys think? This is my version of Captain America. Alright, this last guy, we again needed him to have a very signature weapon, but I knew from the start we weren't going to nail the weapon exactly like we needed to. But then my next struggle was that this guy's got a very special kind of helmet, so I had to try to figure out how to do that. And so this right here is me struggling trying to figure out how to get his helmet quite to be what I wanted it to be. So I'm going through several menus because there's several different ways to get your character to look the way that you want him to. So I'm scrolling through here and I'm hoping that I don't have to settle for like the German military helmet, which I don't end up having to, thankfully. But I also didn't want like the Art Deco or anything like that. I'm scrolling through looking for something that's close enough to my reference. Technically, the MCU didn't really have him wear his helmet that often, but I saw this and I was like, I mean, it kind of works and I can make that look kind of neat. But then the next step is this character also has some big ass wings on the side of his head. So I had to scroll through and try to see if there was anything that would work even close to what I needed. And again, I could have gone with the same kind of wings that I put on the Captain America, but they really didn't suit this guy, and I didn't want to make him look like a dang Gundam or anything like that. So I'm just scrolling through and I'm trying to find anything that may or may not work. Again, I mentioned a couple characters ago, there's like 2-3 menus that you have to go through just for stuff for head. So I'm scrolling through, looking at every option, trying to find the one that works, while also trying to do it in a speedy enough fashion so that you guys aren't staring at the same thing for too long. But I ended up going down here and checking out these wings and the ones that I put on Captain America, and again just trying to see if there's anything that worked. I ended up settling on these ones. They're not quite what I want, but they kind of close enough, especially when I color matched them. So I mean, it kind of works. Hopefully by now you can kind of recognize his helmet. But again, I need a cape for this guy, and I ended up going for this one because the brooches are very similar to what I was looking for. His cape happens to be red, so I went ahead and got that pre-colored. But then I was looking for kind of a chainmail effect for his top. I ended up finding in the tights an actual pattern called chainmail that I just had to get colored properly. Once I got the chainmail set, I ended up looking for a chest piece that I wanted to go under the brooches for his cape, but I also wanted it to go over the chainmail, and ideally have more of the little discs to try to match the references I had for Thor. So I go through quite a few, but I ended up just settling for that first one that I'd gotten colored over there, because nothing else quite sat under the brooches the way I needed to, or had additional brooches to make up for it. So after scrolling through all of them here, I ended up just going with the one that I'd already found and moving on. Thor didn't really wear gloves in any of the references that I had, so I just went ahead and took them off to make it nice and easy. But again, he ended up being a guy who's not really wearing a belt in what I saw, but I did have a quick look to see if there was anything that maybe had the discs that I needed. But I ended up giving up pretty quick on ever finding the additional discs that I need, so that ends up kind of missing on my version of Thor. But I ended up putting on some, he's got some like leg accessory discs that I found that I was like, yeah, maybe this will kind of make up for it. It's not ideal, but it kind of helps make up for it in kind of an illusory kind of sense. And yeah, so these are the references I was working for, and before you ask, I did end up going in and trying to find a version of Mjolnir, even though it doesn't end up being quite the same. But, you know, you kind of work with what you got to work with. Alright, finally, there's no beating around the bush for this one. You guys have definitely been waiting for it, especially if you're a fan of the MCU series. We're going to try our best to make Iron Man. Now, the biggest issue here, none of the masks really suited Iron Man, so I kind of had to use what the game had. So basically, we're just going to say this is, you know, Mark 99 armor or something like that. Basically, it's not going to look like any Iron Man you know, but I at least tried to get the, I tried to get as close as I could, but let's be honest, it didn't turn out as well as even I would have hoped. I still kind of like how it turned out, and I could still see it being an armor that Iron Man might have worn, but it doesn't look like one of his per se. The chest piece I pretty much copied directly off of one of my reference pictures. The mask, I just kind of went with what I had available. I used a gradient for his tights because that way I could get a little bit of the yellow in there as well as a little bit of the red that I was looking for. I looked at a few different options for his power gem, but we definitely needed a power gem. This one ended up being the best option, or power gem, arc reactor, I suppose, is the proper term for that. But other than that, I made sure to layer on armor everywhere I could. I was looking for some shoulder pads here. I had some very specific ones in mind. It took me a little while to get to them, but there they are right there. And then I just had to make them metal and then color match them. Once that was done, we had to go in and check the gloves, which I had to try to find something that kind of suited. I think I was trying to make his helmet look a little more Iron Man-y here first, but nothing really stood out as a viable option. So yeah, then we went to the gloves, where I think this is one of the only ones where I went and found him some other gloves, which I again just tried to make kind of suit the aesthetic in a way, with colorations and lighting where I could. For the arm accessories, I just bolted on some extra armor to try to add a little more texture to the power armor, and color matched it. I put on this kind of like metallic loincloth thing, again, just to kind of add some texture to the armor and to try to break it up from the tights. For the legs, I just went with a solid color instead of the gradient because it kind of suited a little better, but I just put on some bolted on armor again, and I just kind of changed the style and glows to try to make it stand out a bit. Finished off with some kind of Iron Man looking rocket boot kind of dealies. And honestly, this is about the best I could do. You could see from the reference picture on the right that I did what I could, and aside from the mask, I think it came out okay. My camera's still doing the thing, but hopefully you enjoyed this video. Obviously some of the characters looked a lot closer to the references and to the characters that you know than others, but I was really trying to work within the confines of the program, and some of them kind of came out more like reimaginings than as true as I would have liked, but regardless, hopefully you can see the characters kind of in their representation here. Let me know in the comments which one was your favorite, which one got closest, and who you might want to see me do in the future, or if there's maybe a character customization in another game you want to see me try out. Let me know that too. Be free to send me some of your work or your versions of these characters to my Twitter. It's listed in the end card, and other than that, I'm going to leave a video that YouTube thinks you'll like, as well as another playlist in the credits here, and yeah, thanks for watching. See you in the next one.